Hey guys, it's Victoria. I thought that recording this through webcam would be better because I just felt we're not giving you a face to look at. But I believe that there are a few different things that we could do in a situation where a parent says that their child needs more accommodations or they need to be in a separate classroom, and the teacher and the administrators or the people performing the assessments who are part of the team may not believe that it's necessary. Obviously, there are a lot of different aspects to the situation. There's funding, there's going to be just the availability of resources and people, and just what is physically possible in that building. But some of the things that came to mind was a temporary shadow. So if the educators think that this student could really be in a classroom with other students and the parents don't think so, the parents think that maybe they need a lot more support. If the funds are available, I think that considering a shadow would be a way to compromise with the parent. It provides that student a little bit more support, but then at the same time, they still get that inclusion with the regular ed class. And then on that note, there's also partial inclusion or a partial day. We have several students at our school that don't necessarily have to go home early because of their inability to learn with everybody else because of any disabilities, but it's more so behavior. But I could see how that could definitely apply to other students who maybe don't take well to the environment or surroundings at school and can only be there for a few hours. So that might be a little more fitting for other students to do a partial day or even start the day off in a separate classroom and then do inclusion for the end part of the day. Um, I also really think that obviously recording or running records and data and testing, all that is very important during this. No matter what the teacher feels, what the administrator feels, or what the parent feels, at the end of the day, there is a protocol, there are procedures to follow, and there's the right way to do things. So even if the parent believes that what they want is best, or vice versa, and the school thinks that what they want is best, we still have to follow what's right, and we still have to follow protocols, and we still have to test and have certain permissions from parents before we do certain testing. So in that situation, ideally we would present them with this alternative, and they would be like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome, thank you for working that out with me. But in the case that that doesn't happen, obviously we would have to follow up. And in an IEP meeting where we discuss possibly taking a child out of a separate classroom and including them with gen ed, I would definitely try to present several options to the parents so that they know that we're trying to work with them. Obviously, options that I know are feasible, but I would definitely also just make them aware of our reasoning as professionals, as educators, why we believe that their child should be included, and showing them that proof, because nobody really likes to admit that their child's not doing well. So if you do a good job at showing them that their child's doing well and you have that relationship, then it will be a lot easier to transition that child into a classroom where they're with other students that are non-disabled or are in gen ed. I also think that at the end of the day, the parents have the right to want what's best for their child. We, I'm sure, have all dealt with parents who don't really want anything for their child. So it's refreshing and really nice to see parents who do really want what's best for their child, even if it means giving us a little bit of a headache and a little bit of pushback. I would rather have a school full of parents who want to give me pushback and want what's best for their child than a school full of parents who never call because they don't care about their children. I think they have the right to. I went and did a little bit of research, and according to ESSA, when President Barack Obama signed that in 2015, it was an effort to help schools that have really low success rates, and it was an effort to create accountability and high expectations to meet and maintain those high expectations as well, not just to create them. So I think that with having these acts in our history and showing that as a country we are trying to maintain high standards and rigorous instruction, if we're saying we're going to do that, then I feel like it should be absolutely appropriate to support a parent who says that they want what's best for their child. I understand that sometimes funds aren't available, but there's definitely something we could always do. teachers are the best resource in the building, and you can't really run out of those until you run out of the teachers. And if you run out of teachers, you probably don't want to worry about inclusion. You probably have bigger fish to fry. But the point is that as long as we've got teachers in the building, there is an abundance of knowledge. There is honestly, an abundance of knowledge because everybody has gone through different paths, different schools, different textbooks. We all have so many different ideas. So if we all sat down and collaborated, we would be able to make a much more cohesive community between our students, whether they're inclusive or they're from a gen ed setting. And as an educator, measuring and motivating the spirit of students to determine if they are likely to overcome difficult obstacles was kind of a big trick question to me. I think that as an educator, measuring and motivating students and their spirits to overcome any obstacle should come naturally, even if it's not a student with a disability. So I think kind of reverse as usual when teachers see that a student has a disability, they kind of go into it already assuming what the child can't do or assuming that the child can't succeed or anything like that. And I'm very optimistic. So when my parents come into open house and they say, well, he can't read, she talks a lot, he can't sit still, or whatever the case may be, I'm very quick to let them know that I talk a lot too, and I can't sit still, and sometimes I forget how to spell things. And my first language was not English, and I have a lisp, and I never went to speech, and I graduated at the top of my class. So it's very hard for me to look at a child or a student or a group of students and automatically assume less of their expectations or less of their abilities because I feel like I'm more likely actually to over assume and give them way more credit before they can even show it to me because I'd rather that. I'd rather go into a classroom and look at all my kids and say, you guys are all rock stars. You guys can all do this. Let's go ahead and do this. And whoever doesn't, then I can take a note of that. I can use my running records and I can adjust accordingly. But there's no reason to let a child know that I believe that they might not be able to do something. So I think that that just kind of goes with your classroom management. That goes with the environment that the school leaders are setting. Just the culture within the building. You should not walk into your classroom on any given day and expect failure. It should be without a doubt. You wake up in the morning, you go to school, and you're ready to succeed. Whether it's a successful conversation with the student that doesn't like to tell you their favorite color, or a successful conversation with a student that doesn't know what main idea is, and now they do. All those conversations are very essential and they make up the successful student, whether it is through their emotional needs or their physical needs or academic needs or creative needs. As teachers, we fill in a lot of those parts in their lives where maybe other people don't. So I think that it's important to keep in mind that as educators, we have much more than just the purpose of educating. We are inspiring, we are preparing, we are influencing. So it's not about how do I figure out if this child who, on paper it says that they can't hold a pencil the right way, how do I figure out if they really want to try? Nobody asked you. Nobody asked you to ask that child what they want to do. You're a teacher and you believe in them and you should be able to push them to do that. And if they can't, then you will find that out appropriately, not in a way that is demeaning to them, not in a way that is discouraging. But as an educator, we should be able to find those ways to manipulate the situation so that we can get the information we need, but so that the students don't feel like they're at a disadvantage or they're being cornered in or we want them to feel bad about themselves. So I feel like motivating students, engaging their spirits on how they can overcome an obstacle is it's a silly question to ask in this situation because I feel like it should be absolutely applied to every situation, every student, every faculty member, every admin, everybody. You should always motivate your people. You're a team, so if you don't motivate them, you're being like a really bad teammate. And then finally, as far as extensive disabilities that cannot be inclusive. I, from my experience, have been in classrooms with a lot of different personalities, a lot of different abilities and disabilities. So I could see how they could become a distraction. However, I was watching Jan Wilson's TED Talk with the University of Tulsa, and her daughter was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder at 5 years old. And in the first grade, they realized that their school was not providing her or accommodating her with the right resources. And she went on to explain their journey to try to get her to a school that could provide resources. And the way she described it was so real and simple. But the fact is that people have adjusted to this, like, as she described it, a mythical idea in our heads that we are norm. There's a norm. There's this magical able body, a neurotypical body, as she described it. And anybody who has any cultural or linguistic diversities that take away from that, then we automatically label them as disabled. And so I thought it was interesting how she mentioned that those able-bodied people that don't have the disabilities, we do accommodate for them in ways that people don't acknowledge. It would be considered an able body in a classroom. However, I need glasses to see, and we are all able bodies right now during this pandemic, but we've been accommodated with technology and different resources to use to be able to communicate. When it's cold outside, we are able bodies health-wise, but we are not able to just go outside naked in the cold in the middle of December when it's snowing in New York and just survive. We need to be accommodated for it. We have to wear coats. We can't just reach up high and get the trees off the top. I mean, the leaves off the top of the tree. We need ladders. So when you think about it, there are so many things that could be accommodated for humans. I mean, we are not this perfect being. So to just seclude a group of people because of the fact that, their paperwork says that they're a little different is really kind of crazy to me. But I could understand how the resources can vary and how you kind of have to make those adjustments to be able to meet those needs. But she also mentioned the idea of universal design for learning, and this idea that we all have to learn at the end of the day, and we all learn differently. So the point is, we just need to figure out what we need to learn, and then we need to figure out how to get everybody in the room to understand it, because at the end of the day, truth is that you don't learn the same way that I do, whether you have a disability or not. So I mean, we've been doing things wrong, so it's kind of interesting that there was that article about how to help inducting teachers or special education teachers that are new, and how to keep them and how to support them as an instructional leader. And it was just challenging for me to see how this is a problem for us, how we have so much shifted from, this manager principal, you're just here to like turn on the lights, unlock the doors, and call the bad kids in, to this support system. And I think it's so wonderful, and I'm so glad for the opportunities that we have now to study in this field while it's changing and becoming this amazing machine, really. Um, so to say that there are people with abilities that shouldn't be included in a classroom, I could agree. But when Jan Wilson was speaking about it in the TED Talk, she mentioned that people who don't believe, or critics of inclusion, say that those students are invading or disrupting the learning of other students. But honestly, as a teacher who should have been in special ed classes to support my English not being a second, or English being a second language, and my speech impediment, but I didn't, and I was able to succeed, and I was also very well behaved, and I never distracted other students. To be that person that was able to get through this successfully, this school system, without those supports, I could see how that is absolutely irrelevant to say that students are invading or disrupting the learning of other students, because I have students who are very capable and very able, and they disrupt. And so I don't think that that would be fair to say that students with disabilities are the disruptions, or that any student is. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, wow, I say that a lot, but at the end of it, it all depends on the educators and the environment in the building and the expectations that you've made for your students. Um, I've dealt with students of many abilities, and it, all that's important, I won't say all that's important, but the most important is meeting their needs. And I mean, just loving them, showing them that you care, giving them what they need so that they're physically, emotionally capable of learning is step one. So as long as you are able to do that, you're able to create and cultivate an environment where students feel welcomed and they feel accepted and they feel like they can take risks without being scolded or reprimanded, then you've already gone ahead like 10 more steps than the average teacher. So I think that it's definitely possible. I mean, even in a homeroom classroom, I think it's important for not only just for students with disabilities to interact with Gen Ed, but for Gen Ed to interact with students with disabilities because we see so often, too often, in our communities, in our world, anywhere really, where people with differences are not accepted because students do not have those interactions. So I think that those interactions are definitely worthy on both sides. So, um, if it is not beneficial to that student to be in included classroom or included with gen ed, I can understand that, but I don't think that it would be fair to completely strip that socializing aspect of school away from them because we haven't gone through all our resources. I think that it's definitely something that we need to go through all our resources and all our procedures and make sure we are documenting everything and do everything we can to be able to promote and advocate for our students in the best way possible. At the end of the day, we are here to advocate students and like that second question said, do you think parents are right when they want the best possible programming? Absolutely. Do parents think that I'm right, that I want the best possible programming for all my kids? They might not because they're just thinking about their child. I can't blame them. So, I mean, we can't really be mad at them because that's our job too. So, in that situation, it's just a matter of I understand because I care about your child too. And just like I care about your child, I care about every child in this building. So let's go ahead and look at our resources and we will come up with some options and see what is better for everyone because we want to make sure that this works so that your child can succeed. And that's really what it's all about, the children and them succeeding. So just keep that in mind. That's my takeaway. I just feel like after watching all that, it's just important to stop and think, what is the student going to get out of this? How am I going to get that student to meet their goal? And how is this impacting their life overall? Because that's great if you get a child on the autism spectrum to get all A's for their entire public education career. However, if they never got to speak to another human being and have a conversation without having an emotional breakdown or some sort of tantrum, have you really succeeded at making that person a productive individual of society? So you kind of have to question, how can we weigh out all the needs of our students in a way where we can meet them sufficiently and still help them meet their goals? It's definitely an act of juggling.